Well, I think probably it's a matter of culture. In Hong Kong, I'm born and bred in Hong Kong, and all along we have been very used to live in high-rise buildings. 50-story, even 70 stories is very common in Hong Kong. But in many parts of the world, let's talk to some of the people, they don't like living above railway stations. Right. When I mentioned to them that, well, we're building above railway stations. What? I really don't like living above railway station. They like living in their houses in the suburban areas. So I think it's a matter of culture. But in Hong Kong, I think although it is full of skyscrapers, as I said, it can be done in a very civilized way. It all depends on how you planned the whole complex.
A similarity with New York is that people love to live in buildings where you can see open space. So it's not surprising that around Central Park, these are some of the most expensive apartments. Hong Kong has an advantage over New York in as much as there is so much open space, a lot of it is green, and you look out many windows and you see this wonderful green vista that actually wends its way through the city itself. Another thing that happens in Hong Kong is that there is a big focus on innovation in design. People want to do things differently.
You can see here that the stations had to come in and insert themselves into a medieval city, which is very different than in New York, for example, where the development of Grand Central was made quite possible with the grid, and then the development around Grand Central could be simultaneously with the rail lines, and could be reinforced over a long period of time within the grid structure. So that in New York and in the United States, we have the advantage of working within a grid, and also that the authorities built the rail with the development simultaneously. This is different, I think, than what happens in the UK, and is also different what happens in Hong Kong, where the rail is built well ahead of the commercial development.
I would just very quickly summarize with a couple of points where I think we could do better, and where we could learn from Hong Kong. Design is clearly one of them. I thought what was shown in terms of getting the unions to work together in a more innovative way to do different things in terms of how we build tall structures, clearly a great point. Our environmental impact process, completely flawed. Our regulatory process for a project like Moynihan Station, probably over, I would estimate, probably over $15 million has been spent on environmental work that no one will ever read. That is its own kind of workfare program for lawyers and consultants, but doesn't get us any buildings.
The difference between horizontal density and vertical density is great. The similarity between New York and Hong Kong in the competition for space and the kind of density of market-driven density that you see on a slide like this, looking towards Central, is characteristic of both Manhattan and Hong Kong. But there's also a designing density, an intentional density that is a different kind. But it is dense. It's a vertical density, but in what we will look at next in Nick Brooks' illuminating talk are the dynamics that create, by decision, the kind of density that makes the strong line between the nature space of the hills and the concentration of the 50 and 60-story towers of middle-class housing.
There are opportunities to create wealth at all stages of the value chain, and I think this is part of the attraction of the model. Government makes money by selling land, developer makes money by creating the development, and then obviously the flat purchasers, particularly if they buy at the right time in the curve, if you like, they then see capital appreciation. So it's certainly seen as a situation that creates wealth for all the parties in the process.
Who are we? What do we like to do? What do we care about? And how does our city fit into who the people are? Well, young people like to go to these places. This is where we recreate. This is where we buy things. This is where we go to school. Right? This is where we like to meet our friends. This is where we do our business.
And I think it's the interchange. It's not just having one form of transport going, but you can actually jump from, in some cases, especially in Central, you can jump from tram to ferry to minibus to taxi to private car to pedestrian in one spot.
There are so many high-rise towers, in the Shenzhen side, but only rural, villages are shown in Hong Kong. So basically, it's actually starting to, I would say, to happen. But whether it's going to be a Disneyland or not, I just can't tell.
Like many aspects of the built environment in Hong Kong, constraints such as density, verticality, and scarcity of buildable land are overcome by technological and administrative means. Land is reclaimed, escalators convey pedestrians up slopes, plot areas are multiplied as real estate, and the ground plane is replicated as a network of pedestrian bridges. The duplication of the ground has particular consequences to the notion of the public realm and civic space. As the bridge network acts as a proxy to the ground plane as a public territory, it's important to ask what are its limits. And as a bridge network acts as a public work, a piece of urban infrastructure, and it's developed by a public-private development, it raises the issues of maintenance, regulation, definition, and control.
In terms of land use, I described to you about the comparative densities. And in terms of land use, not many people realize, but for those who have spent a good bit of time in Hong Kong, you will agree and appreciate that, in fact, we are a very green city. Over 60% of Hong Kong's land, those 1,100 square kilometers I referred to, are really woodland, grassland, and wetland. And of these, in total, 44% of Hong Kong's land are actually designated as country parks or special interest areas where absolutely no development is permitted because they are by law designated as country parks. And these numbers will go up further because the chief executive has just announced that we will declare another country park on the northern part of Lantau, which is very close to our new airport. In terms of built-up areas, it accounts for only 24%. So it's slightly less than 1/4 of our land is developed. So at the moment, public transport accounts for 89% of the average daily trips. And I think the mass transit railway, i.e. the rails are taking, 37%, almost right? 37% of average daily trips are commuted in Hong Kong, do so on the railway. So, of course, without the public transport, Hong Kong will be clogged up because there is simply not enough roads to take the cars to drive people around to work or to leisure. I don't know whether Thomas has taken us through you. This is a very successful rail plus property model, which is, of course, one of the reasons why we have ended up with the high-density development that we have seen today. It is really very miraculous that all these railway projects were built without incurring a single dollar of the government's money. What the government does is through promoting or advocating this rail plus property model, that is by giving the property development rights on top of the railway stations or the depots to the mass transit railway company so that they could generate immediate proceeds and profits to invest in the railway development. But of course, by definition, railway stations are very rectangular in shape. So in a way, they has given rise to some of the problems that I'm going to share with you and which Thomas and I have to tackle with this high-density wall effect on some of the major railway property development projects.
So, Secretary Lim, as I say, I'm extraordinarily impressed by the scope of your work and not only your identification of the problems that you face, but also the broad measures that you are taking to correct the aspects of Hong Kong which you want to make better and to make a better city, which is, I think, what we do too. The thing that is hovering over all of us is, I think what you called the economic tsunami, the financial tsunami. And because Hong Kong is so identified with growth and economic development as a financial center, and I was wondering can you talk to us a bit about how the economic situation might affect Hong Kong, which relies so much on economic development for its identity?
Thank you. Actually, we are not as hard hit as the Americans, because we have a very strong and robust financial system and banking system. Up till now, we don't have to spend a single dollar of taxpayers' money into our banks. But we are anticipating a very difficult time, because we all often said that there are 4 pillars in Hong Kong's economy. One is, of course, financial center. Second is logistics. Third is services and form of tourism. And all of these 4 areas are going to be quite significantly affected by this economic tsunami. In terms of our logistics, our container port business, we are already seeing it being quite hard hit, because cargoes are not going through Hong Kong, because Americans are not buying or ordering from mainland China.
So we come along really to the urban design dimensions, really the sort of underlying topic of this talk. The process of urban design, I think, in the modern age, is not really about pursuing prescriptive physical solutions necessarily, but more towards integrative placemaking that needs to reflect specific dimensions and contextual values. I noticed from the work that Amanda Burton has been doing in New York that one thing that has been recognized in New York that has not been recognized in Hong Kong, and that we talk about a lot, is the value of neighborhoods of special character. And I think a lot of planning emphasis in the city through sponsored rezonings have actually tried to address this. And that's, I think, a lesson that we can learn in Hong Kong.